by Director Rohit Chopra of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and U.S. Attorney Alamdar Hamdani of the Southern District of Texas. Today, the Department of Justice and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau filed a lawsuit against Texas-based developer and lender Colony Ridge Development, LLC, and its affiliates for operating an illegal land sales scheme and targeting tens of thousands of Hispanic borrowers with false statements and predatory loans. Our complaint alleges that Colony Ridge's actions violate both the Fair Housing Act and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, two federal civil rights laws that prohibit discrimination in housing and lending. Let me note, this is the first predatory mortgage lending case brought by the Justice Department. The complaint also alleges violations of consumer protection laws, which Director Chopra will provide more information about shortly. The Colony Ridge development, also known as Terrenos Houston or Terrenos Santa Fe, is northeast of Houston and currently home to more than 40,000 people. The development has a massive geographic footprint, currently spanning across more than 33,000 acres, nearly the same size as Washington, D.C., and it is growing. Our investigation revealed that Colony Ridge operates as a one-stop shop for discriminatory lending. First, it targets Hispanic applicants with false advertising, promising home ownership on properties it claims have basic utilities such as water and electricity. Second, it steers applicants into seller-financed loans, exploiting their limited English proficiency in the process so that it can close the deal. And unlike responsible lenders who conduct a careful determination about whether an applicant can repay a loan, Colony Ridge does not verify income or any ability to pay, knowing that it stands to benefit if the borrower defaults on the loan. After locking families into loans that they can't afford, Colony Ridge then provides them with flood-prone properties. Many borrowers are then forced to sink additional money into making the lots habitable while Colony Ridge stands by, waiting for those homeowners to default on the loans. When borrowers lose their properties to foreclosure, Colony Ridge completes the scam's life cycle by purchasing the properties back for pennies on the dollar and then reselling them at even higher prices to new, unsuspecting borrowers. The impact of this unlawful, discriminatory, and fraudulent scheme is devastating. Nearly 1 out of every 3 Colony Ridge loans fails within 3 years. That is more than 10 times the national rate. And based on Colony Ridge's sheer size and how long it's been in operation, that equates to thousands of Hispanic borrowers who lost their homes because of this scam. We heard from one woman who used the proceeds from selling her mother's home to purchase a Colony Ridge property, only to discover that she would need to spend thousands of dollars to set up infrastructure for basic utilities, despite being told that those services were, quote, ready on the property. Colony Ridge also told her that the property would never flood, but in reality, during heavy rains, flooding is so bad that she cannot get into or out of her neighborhood. It pained her to realize that with all the money she's invested into her Colony Ridge property, she could have afforded a move-in ready home. This lawsuit is a part of the Justice Department's Combating Redlining Initiative, and it underscores why equal access to credit on fair terms is so important. Indeed, redlining is one of the major reasons that home ownership scams still have a foothold in our economy today. It leaves vulnerable communities devoid of real credit options and leaves them a perfect target for reverse redlining scams that zero in on these communities with predatory loan products. Through today's action, the Justice Department is making clear that it is equally determined to stamp out predatory lenders who take advantage of the conditions created by redlining, as it is to prevent illegal redlining from happening in the first place. I also want to take a moment and speak to the residents of Colony Ridge. I know that you are hardworking people who are hoping to achieve the American dream of homeownership. Through this lawsuit, we are seeking to compensate those who have suffered losses due to these predatory practices. And for future homeowners who intend to live in this development, our lawsuit seeks to ensure that Colony Ridge delivers on its promises and that it offers a fair process for obtaining loans on transparent terms and a proper assessment of whether you can afford to pay back the loan. In closing, I want to thank our colleagues in the Civil Rights Division, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for their work and efforts. Attorneys and staff have spent countless hours with Colony Ridge residents to gather their first-hand accounts of their experiences. We are committed to working with the community to bring this unlawful scheme to an end. I'll now turn the floor over to my colleague, Director Chopra, to provide more context and information about our historic joint filing.
Well, thank you, Attorney General Clark. You know, homeownership has long been a path to financial stability for families in our country, and given the shortage of housing today, many families look to borrow to buy land and install or construct a home of their own. And it wasn't long ago that we saw widespread predatory mortgage lending that crashed our economy. The CFPB was created to make sure this never happens again. And today, the CFPB and the Justice Department are bringing charges in federal court against Colony Ridge, a large housing development in Liberty County, Texas. And in 2022, we opened an investigation into the ring of companies selling and financing land lots. And what we uncovered was disturbing. Baiting buyers on TikTok, exploiting language barriers, and targeting borrowers with predatory loans that turned their dreams into absolute nightmares. Our 11-count complaint alleges that Colony Ridge is operating a sophisticated bait-and-switch land sale scheme, and many of these buyers and borrowers end up losing their investment, and they lose the place they hoped to call home. In its Terrenos Houston development, Colony Ridge sells undeveloped lots to buyers, making false representations that they're suitable plots for building homes. And again, through TikTok videos and targeted online ads described in our complaint, Colony Ridge lies to buyers and claims that all its lots have hookups for water, sewer, and electricity. And Colony Ridge implies and sometimes directly tells borrowers the lots have no history of flooding, but the areas are inundated during heavy rains, and that sometimes results in raw sewage overflowing. It isn't just land sales, and like the Assistant AG mentioned, it's predatory lending too. Like some of that predatory mortgage lending we saw in the run-up to the 2008 financial crisis, Colony Ridge makes no effort to assess whether a buyer could actually make the monthly mortgage payments. Now, ordinarily, companies don't like to make loans where they expect borrowers to default, but foreclosure is actually a part of Colony Ridge's business. When a family falls behind on payments and loses their property, Colony Ridge buys back the property and flips it to another buyer, often at a higher price. The Assistant AG mentioned this. Foreclosures on lots in the Terrenos Houston development have accounted for more than 92% of all foreclosures recorded in Liberty County between 2017 and 2022. And in a recent 3-year period, Colony Ridge actually flipped over 40% of all the properties it sold. It sold more than 8,000 properties twice